Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I'm about to start the show, and I want to first wish you a happy Monday, and second, give you your tasking for the day. Now, it's very simple tasking. Sometime today, if possible today, maybe not today, but this week, but let's say today, go out and buy yourself a Goya product, Goyaa. Now, if you don't know about Goya and what's happening with them, they're getting hammered because the CEO supports Trump, and so we're going to support Goya, because they're calling for a boycott of Goya, and this has been going on for a little while. But I looked in my cupboard today to see if I had Goya, and I actually do. And since I was in the SEAL teams, let's do it in honor not only of Goya, but of the team guys that are downrange. Go get Goya Navy beans. Go get a can of that, and then take a picture of it and put it on social media and tag me in it. Jonathan T. Gilliam on almost everything except for Twitter, @Gilliam_SEAL. Go get Goya Navy beans. Text a picture of it in support of Goya and the SEALs that are deployed downrange. And let's start the show. This is Jonathan Gilliam back on a Monday. Happy Monday on the Experts Podcast. The truth has arrived. And there's some interesting stuff that I'm going to bring up here. And now, just so in case you haven't listened to this podcast before, and shame on you, or maybe not shame on you, I'm glad you came along. Glad you found out about it. It's there's a lot here, right? And I sat here racking my brain, as always it seems like this, to try to come up with what I'm going to talk about today. It is right now 3:40 a.m. Monday morning, and I've been sitting here looking at the computer for several hours trying to figure out what I'm going to talk about, and all of a sudden, boom, it all just popped out. Bing, bang, boom. So there's a whole medley of things. There's one main issue that I want to talk about, but let's start it off by talking about some breaking news that's coming on right now, and that is that a judge, a U.S. District Court judge to be exact, her home was attacked tonight, and her son was killed, and her husband was injured. I guess he's still in the hospital, or is in the hospital right now, and there's no word on his actual state right now. But it's very interesting, okay, because there's some things about this judge that are it's just going to lead itself to conspiracy theories, I'm sure. Let's see, it was already published in several different places, and they brought up the fact that 4 days ago she was assigned to a case linked to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, before you go freaking out because she got killed, and the guy who showed up evidently was wearing what appeared to be a FedEx driver outfit. I don't know if he was driving a truck. It just says FedEx driver ambushed their home. Somebody who appeared to be a FedEx driver, at least dressed like that. And the court case about the Epstein that has to do with Epstein has to do with Deutsche Bank and their involvement with Epstein. So it just, to me, from an investigative standpoint, and, you know, it's too early to say one way or the other, but it sounds to me like that's not the kind of case where people are going to go out and you have, you know, shooters or hired killers going to go and take somebody out because Deutsche Bank has a case where people are suing because they had something to do with Epstein. That just doesn't sound like a connection to Epstein that I would be concerned about. Now, if they said that this was the judge who was presiding over the Ghislaine Maxwell case, Epstein's assistant, and it was in its final stages, and the judge was killed, now that would kind of send alarms up for me. But this doesn't really to me, the Epstein thing is a coincidence in this. Now, I could be wrong, but that's what I feel just from the onset, okay? But what does stick out to me is that the Real Housewives of New Jersey star Joe and Teresa, and I always forget how to say their name. I think it's Judici, I think is how you say their name. I could be wrong on that. But anyway, they're the ones who went to jail. I think it was for tax evasion or something like that. He got deported. She went to jail first, and then she came out, and they actually did him a favor by doing this, but she went to jail first, served her sentence, came out, and then the husband went in and served his, and then he either is or is going or was deported. I'm not sure if he's out of jail yet, and I'm not going to take the time to look it up because it really doesn't really matter to me about what his future is. But that stands out to me because they have mob ties. It's been shown over and over again. And that to me is very interesting, okay? Because this guy is getting or was deported back to Italy after serving jail time. And who knows if it could be a revenge killing. But we don't know anything yet. That's just my initial take on it. There's a couple things that are odd about it. That's the one, the fact that there is an Epstein tie very loosely, and the other one is that these two people that are associated with the mob had a case, and they weren't happy about it. So it's very interesting nonetheless. Of course, there could always be that the son was involved with something. The husband was involved with something. She could have been involved with something. Who knows the reality of what goes on behind closed doors? You'd be surprised at what I've seen when law enforcement, what goes on behind closed doors. But keep your eye on that because there's some interesting stuff about it. So that's that. That's all I'm going to cover on that because there's really no more to cover on it right now. It's just kind of breaking. But a very ridiculous thing that's in the news, and nobody's really saying anything about this, and I'll tell you why, about Kanye West. Nobody's saying anything because they're not sure if this is this something that they're doing with the Trump campaign to try to steal votes from Joe Biden. I think that maybe people are kind of leery of saying things about that. And look, if he does that, that's whatever. That's fine. It doesn't really, more power to him to steal as many votes away from Joe Biden as possible. However, he said some things over the past couple of weeks that to me spells your typical Kanye West mental illness. And I think he is probably manic depressant. I don't know if he's depressant, but definitely know that he's manic. I mean, a normal person doesn't meet the president and then go out and buy a 747 so he can fly around in the same plane that the president of the United States flies around in so he can feel powerful. I mean, that spells narcissist to a level that we can't even fathom, and most of us anyway. And he has a rally tonight, a presidential rally, and he's wearing looks like he's wearing a bulletproof vest, which is, anyway, he's having this, I don't know if he gets threats all the time or not, but he's wearing this vest and he's having this rally, and he goes from kind of manic to crying, and I don't know what's going on with him and Kim Kardashian, but I can tell you that what he said, if there wasn't problems before, there's definitely problems now, because while he's crying, says that that he stopped Kim Kardashian from aborting their child when he got a message from God. So I guess he had to get a message. See, this is the type of weird narcissistic stuff. This is why I'm going to say what everybody else is thinking. And, I support President Trump. If they're trying to use him for whatever, that's fine, but I'm not going to keep it what I'm thinking from everybody. And the fact is, this guy's nuts. He's a narcissist to the nth degree. He thinks that God, first of all, I guess he was okay with the abortion before God told him not to have it. But he thinks that God came down and said, don't have this abortion. So God's different to Kanye than he is the other millions of people that have abortions and kill their babies every year. I guess Kanye has got some kind of special thing with God that he would reach down to him and say, oh yeah, this is a bad thing. You shouldn't do it. So Kanye couldn't make that decision on his own. He's too special. He had to have a message from God not to abort his child. Yeah. I call holier than thou bullshit on that one. Okay. Now, the other thing he did in there is that he calls. I'm reading this as I'm going along. He calls for 1 million for every baby. 1 million for every baby. I don't even know what they mean by that. And rants that Harriet Tubman never actually freed the slaves. I mean, this is like bizarro stuff. Now, the very fact that he's running for president, or at least he says he is. I'm not really sure if this is a stunt or just another one of these manic episodes. I think he's legit in his belief that he's going to run and win for president. But this is how dirtbaggish he is, and people like this are the Kardashians. You know, they went into the White House. Kim Kardashian worked and pleaded with the president to do this stuff with prison reform, which I don't know how she got all mixed up in that stuff. She's as far from that stuff as anybody could possibly be, but somehow she got messed up in it. There's no way she identifies with somebody who's been put in jail unlawfully or who served a long sentence for something that they did, and maybe it's too long. I don't know how she became the expert in this field. However, the president did listen. And he did, and I met some people at a festival where I was the MC at, two guys who had gotten out, and it was pretty much just a tragedy or travesty of what happened to them and how they spent all these years in prison, basically thanks to Bill Clinton. And so anyway, the president, you know, he hears them. And he respectfully had Kanye West in the White House, who acted like a jackass when he was there. I think he was most likely manic there as well. And then Kanye turns around and does and says all these different things, basically throwing mud pie in the face of the president. And I find it disrespectful. Kanye can do whatever he wants. He's a perfect example of people who have too much money. And I said it, too much money. I think the problem with a lot of these people, and this may be something we want to look at in the future. Look, I'm a capitalist through and through. If I could make millions and millions of dollars, then I would love to make millions and millions of dollars. But I've got a real problem with people who make billions and then get into politics, or even people who make hundreds of millions and then start affecting the country simply because they have the money to do that. Now, you want to go out and you want to have business, you want to make billions. You want to make $1 trillion. Doesn't matter to me. But just like everything else in this modern day, there's an issue with these people and a danger to how much they influence politics and affairs in this nation. I really don't care about the rest of the world when it comes to, I can't concentrate on the rest of the world. I mean, there's just so much going on right now. It's basically the same players causing problems everywhere. But when we look at the United States and we look at the major problems that are happening, I've talked about the family tree of evil and leftist, progressive, socialist, communist, globalist, all that nonsense. It's really the same ism. Globalism, socialism, communism, progressivism, so on and so forth. It's all leftist. And their belief, the masses believe in this utopia that is without a government. But really, the people who are at the head of all those isms believe in their power. And that's going to be the way that they achieve absolute power, is through those ideologies, which are exactly the same. Fascism, there's another one. But Kanye West is a perfect example of why we should seriously start looking, not keeping people from making their money, but keeping them away from the politics and from the influence and the wielding of that power that comes with that money. Again, somebody wants to make all the money in the world and live their life however they want. More power to you. I have no problem. You want to give all your money away to people who are less fortunate, or you want to keep all your money and not give anything less fortunate people, whatever. I don't really care, because ultimately, you know, it's the people who are going to help the poor. But even Christ said there will always be poor, right? There's nothing you can't stop it. You just can't stop it, because a lot of that has to do with circumstances of either the citizenry not caring or the people themselves not caring. But when we look at Kanye West And we look at the Koch brothers, for instance, who are deviant as can be, making everybody think that they're out for conservatism, but very, very odd group of guys. And a lot of the people that I've ever met that had associations with them were odd as well. And somehow, some way, mysteriously, were always the ones who could get positions in media, who became hosts of shows, or the regular contributors or paid contributors for different networks. Koch brothers had their hands in all that. Now it's a Koch brother, I guess. All these individuals, I spent enough time around very wealthy people doing crisis management to see that there's very few really wealthy people that have their head on straight. And one thing I can definitely say about this president is that, yes, he's eccentric and he does not back down from a fight. But I find it interesting how he didn't buy his way into the presidency. He spent less money on his campaign than most, I mean, in modern history, most people ever have. He said in his campaign, when I say they, his campaign and the president himself talked about and identified with the people about what the problems were. That is what got him elected, not his money. And if somebody is rich and that's and very, very, very wealthy and that's what they want to do, that's fine. It's the realm of influence that these people have with their money in politics and in activism. And as you can see with George Soros, their ability to fund destructive events in this nation. You see, that is the particular thing that we need to look at. Kanye can do whatever he wants. I don't give a crap because he's a moron and I think he's manic and has mental issues and should probably be on meds. And, that's probably where his creativeness comes from, quite frankly. Although I don't know how good his stuff is. I've never listened to a Kanye song, never bought a piece of Kanye clothing. I actually don't know anybody who wears Kanye clothing. And I only know a few people who listen to his music. So I don't know how he became so rich, but it is what he is. Now, if he wants to run for president, he wants to say stupid things and be outwardly in the open, I'm okay with that. In fact, if all these billionaires want to do their stuff out in the open, I'm okay with that. It's when they go dark. It's when they do subversive activities and they utilize their money in nefarious ways against, as I believe, anybody, whether you're a billionaire or not, somebody who has nefarious intentions to injure or overthrow the Constitution of the United States. And when I say injure, I mean people who are wanting to change the form of government, which in essence injures the Constitution, or goes after and tries to change or amend the rights so that there are less rights. Not more people who can have access to those rights. Everybody should have access to them. But to have the rights reduced, that, to me, injures the Constitution, and those things should be illegal. Anybody who tries to do it should be charged, tried, and they should be given the death penalty. I don't want to mess around with that. And I think everything that you're seeing right now has something to do with everything I just discussed. There's big money billionaires behind it. It's subversive, and they are directly going after the Constitution. There's no way. First of all, let's look at the people that were coming up and all the aliens that were coming up. They're not illegal aliens as long as they're outside the border, right? So people from other countries coming to the United States border to try to get in when Trump first came into office. Those people came from places like Honduras, Colombia, Venezuela. Well, I don't even know Venezuela, but they were coming from way down there in Central South America. They came here, and in some cases, they got here in 2 weeks. Now, I've traveled extensively in Central South America, and I can tell you one thing. The poor down there you take your poorest here and add a little bit more, that's how poor they are. There's no way they're going to get from there to here. No way. Just on budget alone. Now, to do it in 2 weeks on buses, that was organized. And who do you think organized that? Very, very wealthy people who hated Trump and who are subversive to this Constitution. And they are the ones who paid and organized all that. And they're all part of these ideologies, these isms that I was talking about earlier. So they're the ones who, in their efforts to get these people to the border, were subversively trying and covertly trying to affect an election or affect the leadership of the president and injure the country. That should be illegal. And I think, again, another thing are these PACs. A lot of people live pretty extravagant lives off of running a PAC. That's a political action committee, I think is what that stands for. And most of you that give money to PACs may not realize this, but you're not giving it to the campaign. You're giving it to the PAC. Now, I challenge you. If you're ever in Washington, D.C., go to the Trump Hotel. Incredibly beautiful place. I love it there, but a drink is $40. Go there and then go there again. And you watch the people that come in and hang out around there on a regular basis. A lot of those people work for PACs or lobbyists, and they live off your dime. They live off your dime. And you think you're giving money to the political campaigns, but you're not. And they raise millions and millions and millions of dollars off of unwitting participants and these big money donors. Because a lot of these PACs, I'm not real sure on the laws. I know that they're really virtually not regulated, and people can give as much money as they want in some of these cases, to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. And again, I don't have anything against somebody like Kanye West running for office and spending their own money on it. The president did that, and it worked. But when people are doing it covertly or in a subversive way, I think that should be illegal. I do. Now, since I probably pissed off some people there that consider themselves conservative and they can't, fathom anybody not being able to do what they want with their money, I'm going to throw you another curb. I think, and I'm a constitutionalist through and through. Okay, I believe in the Constitution, but I don't believe it needs to be interpreted. And I think that the Supreme Court does a real injustice on our Constitution a lot of the times by interpreting it instead of just taking it at face value. People do that with the Bible as well, and they interpret it instead of just reading it for what it says. And when I look at the First Amendment and I look at the freedom of speech issue, and then I do look at what the Supreme Court has said, that you can't run into a crowded theater, for instance, and yell fire, or that there's a burning building. You can't incite a riot. I don't understand how these protests are being allowed to continue when they are destructive. You go to a protest, and law enforcement, and I don't care how they do it, but if there's a protest and there's evidence that anybody in that audience or in that group has thrown a frozen water bottle, it's over. If they sit on the line and yell out about what they are there to protest, I don't have a problem with it. I've seen up close Black Lives Matter, and they are, they're a communist group full of useful idiots that don't realize what the group even stands for. But, if as soon as they start yelling, F you, F the cops, and they start instigating people, which I've seen it, where they're up there and they're trying to instigate people to fight. I don't believe that should be protected by the First Amendment. I don't. Now, talking to somebody today and several people, how they're saying that, who's going to be the judge of, where this correct speech comes from and where it starts and where it ends. I think it's very simple, really. I don't think it takes a whole lot of research to figure it out. Whatever you are protesting, your speech should be limited to that. If you move out of the realm of either peaceful protest or the subject in which you are there to protest, and you move into let me back up a second. I don't mean that if you go up there to protest for instance, the lines in the center of the road are yellow and you want them red, and you go up there and you start protesting, we want red lines. And then you switch to, you want cheaper pharmacy medicine. I don't care what it is. That's fine. But when you switch from protesting about a specific or a group of causes, if it's a cause, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If you're there and you're trying to get your word through, and things may get heated, whatever, but you're still staying on the cause, that's one thing. But as soon as you defer over to violence or the threat of violence or trying to instigate others, which, Black Lives Matter and Antifa and these leftist groups, they all do that. They come up there or they'll go and stand in front and do a counter protest, and they are trying to get people to fight. As soon as that occurs, it should be over, should be stopped. And if that group shows back up and does it again, then it should be stopped, and they should not be allowed to come back out, not for a period of time, and then they can try it again. And if they do the same thing again, then I think they should just be shut down. That's my personal opinion. I don't think that the First Amendment, and I know people, I don't think it protects it. And I know people are going to say, what about the civil rights movement back in the 60s? They were looked upon as the enemy and saying things that were, provocative. But I don't think that is, if we had a strict standard of violence, that wouldn't have applied there, because Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement, by and large, was peaceful, but it would have been effective against people like the Black Panthers and these different black separatist groups who killed a New Jersey state trooper and who blew stuff up in LA. And see, it would have stopped that. Those people are not protected by the First Amendment, I don't believe. I think it's been interpreted wrong. And I don't think anything I've just said limits the First Amendment. I served in so many different capacities, swearing an oath to the Constitution to support and defend the Constitution and that First Amendment in the Bill of Rights. I don't ever want to degrade the First Amendment, but what I'm saying is that I do not believe that when these people go out there and their speech moves to violence, or their actions move to violence, or they are playing a game to try to get the other side to commit violence, I don't believe that is protected by the First Amendment. And just like our freedom of religion has been the separation of church and state has been bastardized by people with political aims to make people think that the state cannot have anything to do with religion, it is another example of how these things get bastardized by judges and politicians. The separation of church and state means that your religion can never be regulated by the state. The state can never push a religion out on you. But it does not mean anything. These are politicians that have made this up, whether they're judges or not. They're all politicians, they have enforced laws to say that you can't pray at school, or you can't read something out of the Bible at school. You're not forcing the religion on people, but that's the first thing that they go after is Christianity. Really, it used to be religion in general. Now it's just mainly Christianity. They just go immediately after that. Now, I've thought these things through, and I'd be open to debate on this, but I'm telling you, I have not looked at these things from an emotional standpoint, and I have not looked at them as just in a whimsical mindset. I see what's happening here in this country, and I look at all the revolutions. I was watching this incredible show on Netflix, actually, believe it or not, about the history of individuals who helped bring about a coup d'etat on a nation, on nations, I guess, throughout history. And it's very interesting because as I was watching that, I was seeing all the things that have happened here in this country and really around the world, but, I'm focusing on the country. It's happened here. And the personalities that they described, the way that the people were used as useful idiots, as Saul Alinsky described, it was all repeated over and over and over and over again throughout history, and nobody does anything to stop that from happening. So when I started looking at our own Bill of Rights, and of course, evil people will always use the laws in their favor. That is what fundamental Islamic terrorists do, in how they function, not just in our own country, but in all countries. They use the laws against us and in their own favor. So it's the same thing here. These people that instigate these riots or the violence or that are subversive and trying to injure the Constitution, they will use the First Amendment to do their dirty work. And I feel the same way about media. You know, the media can do whatever they want, but I think that it should be that the FCC should not allow themselves to be called news organizations, because that gives a presumption of fact in the things that they say. And I don't believe that again, is protected by the First Amendment. The freedom of the press. People think that they're talking about media corporations, and they're not. They're talking about the printing press and the ability to disseminate information. But there's nowhere in the First Amendment where they talk about people who are subversive, who are trying to injure the Constitution or a president or a certain faction of the country, that they should have the freedom to lie and say that it's truth when it's not. There's nothing in there, and then claim that they are the ones being written about in the First Amendment. Now, scholars may want to disagree with me, or keyboard scholars, but I have looked at this over and over and over again, and what is happening and what has happened throughout history is exactly this. It is just another form of propaganda. And I do not believe that that is protected by the First Amendment. Now, who's going to be the judge of that? Well, I don't think it's that difficult. You know, attorneys and people who are scholars like to use word salads and like to make things seem that like they're much more difficult than they really are. And I don't think that this is a difficult thing to figure out. If it's truth, it's truth. If it's opinion, it's opinion. But it needs to be pointed out that way. And news, by the way that we define it, is based in truth and fact. Otherwise, it's gossip. And they should be known as gossip if that's the case. I don't think that the FCC should just give these people carte blanche and that they should have a free ticket into the White House and every other agency in the United States where these press pools. I don't believe that they have any more right than you and I when it comes to knowing what happens. And how can they go into the White House when all they do is lie for a living and then claim the First Amendment freedom of the press? It is not the media that they're talking about. And I think this is something that we need to look at. Definitely need to look at. Because as I sat and watched that documentary about these coups d'etats and how they came about, again and again and again, the steps that are being used right now have been repeated throughout history. And every single time, it did nothing but cause death and destruction. It never brought goodness to a country. Never. And I think that this is something that is very important, and it is causing major damage to this country as we speak. Now, let me know what you think about that. @Gilliam_seal on Twitter, Jonathan T. Gilliam everywhere else, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I really do want to know what you think about this, because I think it's clear to me. It's not injuring the First Amendment. And it should be easy to set to design a set of standards, not to what you have to say, but to the parameters need to be, I guess you could say, the parameters of the First Amendment need to be defined. What is speech and what is action? Because, again, that's another thing that is confused because of the courts. Somebody can burn a flag and they say that that's speech.
when they could just simply say, I hate the United States of America. I hate this flag. But when you burn the flag, that's an action. And I believe the courts got it wrong. The same thing with abortion. The courts can't define where life starts. They don't have the ability to look into an embryo and say, okay, life is in there. And obviously, politicians definitely do not, because they even say you can have the baby and life doesn't begin until the parent and the doctor say, okay, it's alive or it's worth keeping. These things that the founding fathers set in motion really needed little interpretation. And the incredible way that it was laid out was such that those who were not free when it was written had to be free eventually, because the Constitution was based on truth. And I don't know if the founding fathers even realized that when they did that. Most of them owned slaves, as had the rest of the world at that particular time and backwards for the entire time of history. Since man started, slaves have been around of all nationalities, colors, genders. Had the founding fathers not written the Constitution the way that they did, then we wouldn't have had that truth set in stone, and there would still be slavery in this world, definitely in this nation. And if you think for a second that if any other race or gender or any of these activists got their way or got absolute power, that they wouldn't enslave other people if that wasn't in the Constitution, you're kidding yourself. The Constitution has protected us all from slavery in the past and from slavery in the future, as long as we don't change that. And I don't think it needs to be interpreted as much as people think. The courts interpret things because lawyers and judges, and activists, that's how they stay employed. That's ego. That's elitist, that they feel like they need to interpret it when, it's written like you and I could read it, although it's written in a little bit of lawyer speak. Overall, you can get it. There's little interpretation that needs to go along with it. It's fact. So I think this is something that we truly need to look at in this country, and it needs to be done now. Because I'm telling you, folks, I'm going to keep saying this every day in the podcast. If we get to November and this citizenry has not stepped up and stepped out, we are doomed. We are doomed. And every day I'm sitting here watching this clock go by as I'm speaking and recording this podcast. 37 minutes and 49 seconds, 50 seconds, 51, 52, 53. Every second that goes by is a second that we are closer to November. And remember, in November, it's not just the president, it's the House of Representatives, it's the Senate, and ultimately the Supreme Court, if the wrong people are in office, if we don't get the right president in office. The Republican Party is a failure. It is a failure. But the Democrat Party is a communist party. Can the Republican Party be used to save this country? Yes, it can. It can. And the more people that we get into the Republican Party, not that are new, that's another mistake people are making. Oh, it's the new breed of Republicans, young and energetic. I don't need young and energetic. I'd rather have somebody who's 85 years old and who's done more things than they made in movies about in Hollywood, and has a good head on their shoulders, he or her, and goes up there and doesn't take crap from anyone and stands for the right thing. Where are the congressmen and senators that after about a month come back out to the microphone and say, this place is totally effed up and none of these people have your best interests? Where are those people? Everybody's too worried about getting reelected and about their career. And they feel like, and this is a mistake that people make in their careers. They stay in their careers too long because they feel like I can't give that up because that's what makes me somebody. And if you're not happy in a career, it doesn't matter how prestigious it is. Who you are is going to be injured, right? So if you're not happy, if you feel like you're not making, if you went to Washington, D.C. with a goal of making a difference and bringing this country back, and you get up there and you see that there's nothing there, that it's worthless, but you don't want to injure this good deal that you've been given, shame on you for not speaking out. Shame on you. I have a feeling that the congressman or congresswoman that does that goes up there and just destroys what's going on, is going to be reelected. All they got to do is raise their hand. They're going to get reelected. So I think all this stuff is something. And the reason I even brought that up is because I keep seeing this new and energetic. Oh, this person's so young and they're energetic. We don't need that. We need experienced, trained, hardened people who are not afraid to buck the system. And if it takes being booted out of there or not winning the next election, then so be it. But young people who think that they are the answer is not what we need up there. And Harvard graduates, I'm sorry, I know there's a lot of you that are very smart, and we don't need any more Harvard grads in Washington, D.C. We need E7s from the military and O3s. They get stuff done. These people that are, the creme de la creme throughout history, and that's another thing, looking at history a lot lately, you look at history, and they're the people who screw everything up. None of this stuff is rocket science. It all comes down to egos and power and just narcissism in general. And it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. Let's take a break, and I'm going to come back and talk for just a minute about this very thing. And this is the main thing I want to talk about, but I'm saving it for last because it's going to be it's not going to be very long, but it's very important. And I do want to get your opinions on this, so stay tuned. We'll be right back. I know I talk a lot about my books on this show, but I just want to make sure that if you have not checked out Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and it's 2 workbooks that go with it, that you at least go check it out. You can go on and listen to the first, 2 minutes of it on Amazon if you just click on listen here, and you can at least hear what I'm saying. The important thing that you have to take away from this is that this book, like no other, is going to show you how attackers look at you and teach you how to look at yourself the same way, how to divide your life into sectors, how to target each sector with that knowledge and understanding, those tactics, techniques, and procedures. And then the workbooks allow you to do your own threat assessment on every aspect of your life, and then take that information and put it into the defense assessment workbook. Now, along with that, I designed, along with Danielle Kreiner, a children's book called The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. And it's a book of pictures that you can give your child, and in the pictures are embedded security, safety, awareness, and communication lessons. And the parent, you can go to teamlittlebigs.com and download the lesson plans. So what you literally have is a way to teach your child non-verbally. They can sit there and look at the books, and you can point to those pictures and really start them off at a very, very young age, helping them to understand what they should do, what they shouldn't do, and how to communicate these things. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival was written for, I would say, people 10 years and up. Definitely for an adult to understand the world that they live in. And The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children, was written with those children in mind, so we can start them out young to understand what they need to do to stay safe and how to communicate these things. Trust me, folks, I did this for you, and I hope that you'll go check them out, because this is how you secure your homeland. The Adventures of Team Little Bigs and Sheep No More. Go get them. And let's get back to the show. Okay, this is going to be an issue that I was thinking, do I tackle this issue? Do I not tackle this issue? But, you know, I tackled it with John McCain, and I've tackled it with several other people that are in Congress and the Senate who at one point in their life did some amazing things, or an amazing thing, which is often the case. And then they end up being completely worthless for the rest of their career. As soon as they touch politics, then they're done. Their careers are terrible, or I don't know if they get recruited into an unholy alliance with evil people. I don't know. I don't know what happens. But Representative John Lewis, he died this week at the age of 80. And I'm not going to hide the fact that I totally pounced on him when I hosted, it was either David Webb, I think it was David Webb's show. And I know the producer was not happy with me after I hosted that show, and criticized him heavily, because John Lewis was not a hero in Congress. I don't care what anybody says. I look at his career, I go back and try to figure out everybody's saying all these incredible things about John Lewis. And when I look at his congressional career, it's not there. The same thing with John McCain. This isn't a black-white thing. John McCain, or a Republican Democrat thing. John McCain, you know, some will argue heroic or not, but had his heroic moments in Vietnam and as a prisoner of war. Regardless of whether he was a turd or not, he was shot down, did sustain injuries, and was in a prisoner of war camp for a period of time. I know there's people who cannot stand him. There's people from the Vietnam era who hate him, but let's just, you know, let's make the best of it and say that, you know, he did serve, he did get shot down, he did spend time in a prisoner of war camp, and so we'll give him the honor of that. Okay, let's just leave it at that. I don't want to get in any debates about whether or not he was honorable. I'm not a John McCain fan, but let's just say that's it. He then goes to Congress, and for over 30 years was worthless, but portrayed himself as this amazing, amazing person. And many people championed him. Mainly other politicians championed him. I'm sure people in Arizona tried to champion him, but when I went there and spoke in his district, I met like 300, 400, 500 people. None of them had anything good to say about John McCain when I was there. John Lewis is very similar. People buy into this image of who John Lewis was at one point, and they mistake that as somebody as being great while he was in office. And unless there's some hidden things that he did, his record speaks for itself. I mean, you look at what he was involved with. You want to talk about real on-the-ground activism and community activism. I mean, he was involved with that on the ground level with Martin Luther King. I don't know how much he did or if he was just there, and he got beat up pretty good, spent a couple days in the hospital. But when you look at his life, you know, born in 1940, and then at the age of 19, you know, after being interested in civil rights, and he got involved with that, and he worked for Martin Luther King Jr. and participated in, I'm reading this off of foxnews.com where they did this. They put all this stuff out there, right? And it's like the headline reads, Representative John Lewis, timeline of events in a remarkable life. Okay. And he was born the son of a black sharecropper, or black sharecroppers near Troy, Alabama. So he's the real deal. Right, he was born in Alabama in an era where it was not equal. And he took part in making things equal through his activism, through serving as chairman of the Student Nonviolent coordinating student. Let's see, what does it say here? Serving as chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. There you go. Now I got that out. That was and then he arrived in Selma, Alabama, to help register black voters. And 8 months later, just days before Martin Luther King organized the March on Washington, D.C., he was arrested for the first of more than 40 times. He was arrested for civil disobedience in advancing the civil rights of black people. Amazing, right? That's amazing. Somebody who just keeps coming back and saying, give me more. He was beaten, and on March 7th, 1965, he was beaten by Alabama state trooper while attempting to lead an estimated 600 voting rights marchers out of Selma on the way to Montgomery in a violent confrontation now known as Bloody Sunday. And that was on March 7th. That's when that happened. But on March 21st of the same year, he joined thousands of others during the Selma to Montgomery voting rights march. And there's a picture of him locked arm in arm with Martin Luther King Jr. and others. I mean, he's a real deal. 1971, he takes over executive director of the Voting Education Project, a program of Southern Regional Council. I don't know what that is. But as you can see, from 1959 at the age of 19 all the way to about 1971, I'm not sure what happened between 65 and 71, he was very active and was literally a guy on the ground. He was in the mix. Okay, people can say what they want about, nowadays about civil rights and being an activist. This guy was there. And you can't take any of that away from him. I don't know, and again, it's hard to tell exactly the details. Was he there? How much of a part did he play? Did he play parts in the decision-making process? I don't know that. I don't know. But he was there nonetheless. He was there and he took part in it, and I give him credit for all of that. That's one of the reasons why we are where we are today, and why I say that we've actually gone backwards in civil rights, not civil rights, but in civility and the understanding of equal. We've gone backwards from this. In 1977, he made his first bid for Congress, and he lost. Of course, they got to point out that it was a popular white politician in a runoff. I mean, I don't know the gist of that. I don't know if people were, racist down there at that point in time. I don't know, but they pointed out that the guy was white. Okay, whatever. But in 1981, he got into office for the Atlanta City Council, and he served there till 86. Okay. Again, I don't know what he did there. I don't know if he made a difference at all being in the city council. But in 1986, he was elected to Congress. Now, all that stuff that I just read to you from 1959 until, let's say 1971, because from that point forward, I don't really know what he did. Really, I would say up until 1965. That's where the real juice of the things that he had done, right, really stood out. It's almost 10 years. Almost 10 years he was working in this environment from 59 to 65, where he was in there on the ground with the people who were making a difference, maybe one of the people who was really making the difference. And then 71 to 81, he did some things. Jimmy Carter appointed him to a few things, or at least one. Direct Action, a federal volunteer agency, he was appointed to that. But in 1986, he was elected to Congress. All that busy work, all that honorable stuff that he did before suddenly came to an end when I'm starting to look at what he did from 86 on. I mean, again, when I'm looking at this, from before 1959 on up forward, it's like action, action, action on the ground in the places where things were happening. 1986, he's elected for Congress. He was elected 16 times. And the only things that they mention from that point on in this story is in 2001, he received the John F. Kennedy Profile and Courage Award for Lifetime Achievement, one of a multitude of honors, including Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, which they've totally degraded that by giving it to people like, I think Harvey Weinstein got it. I know actors, tons of actors have gotten it, sports figures. It's a BS freaking medal that they give out. Doesn't really mean anything as far as I can tell. In 2009, he was arrested in Washington during a demonstration at the Embassy of Sudan where they were protesting the expulsion of aid workers amid humanitarian crisis. Nothing to do with the United States. Okay. 2015, he joined Obama and former President George W. Bush and thousands of others in Selma to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. Okay. He showed up at a celebration. In 2016, again, folks, for over 10 years, 59 to 65, really, let's say to 71, this guy was on the ground taking part. And like many others, he gets elected to Congress, and that's it. In 2016, he led the Democrats where they sat on the floor and looked like a bunch of idiots, protesting gun control measures, which wouldn't have done anything. No matter what they pass, it would just have effects on legal ownership and injure the Constitution, the Second Amendment. So this guy's gone from being a crusader of equality for the black community to sitting on the floor of Congress with a bunch of other morons trying to get enacted gun safety measures that would do nothing to stop the black on black killing in the inner city around this country. Nothing. Would have done nothing. He didn't do anything to stop the killing that's going on in the black community. And then when I look at 2019, he announced he had been diagnosed with advanced pancreatic cancer. That's it. He died July 17th, 2020. I mean, literally, over half, 3/4 of this story is all about the things that he did 50 years ago. Amazing stuff, but it was 50 years ago. And then when he got in office for 30 years, it's like 3 paragraphs, and it's nothing but he was given this award and given that award. There's nothing listed here that he really did that helped anybody out. And this is, this is an example. John McCain, like I said, is another example, but there's many, many other people who've done amazing things or an amazing thing. And then they get into government, and that's it. They never do another thing that has anything to do with helping the nation or solving problems or still standing up for the things that they did before. If things were so bad in this country racially, like we keep hearing about the racism that's so rampant in this country. John Lewis was a congressman all through the Clinton era, that's Bill Clinton era, all through George Bush, all through Barack Obama, and now through President Trump, and he didn't do anything to fix that. There's nothing listed in there. So this guy who had all this knowledge and wisdom about on-the-ground action, as soon as he got elected to Congress, just went away and didn't do anything. And it's just another sign of where you take people who have had the opportunity to do something great, took full advantage of that and did some amazing things, heroic things, and then blew it by going into government. It's a sad state of affairs when you look at government in that light. Now, I know I'm going to get blowback from this. I know people are going to be like, I can't believe that you trashed him the week that he died. But I think it's very important to bring this up. I think this is the perfect time to bring it up. It was a life, as far as I'm concerned, wasted. I think John Lewis could have been so much more had he never gone into government. He could have been a pillar of example. But because he went into government and got involved in the Democrat Party, and look, John McCain was involved with the Republican Party, so I don't even know if that really matters what party you're in. But John Lewis went into government and ruined his ability to take what he had done and help the United States of America further itself and further the black community. He didn't do anything for them once he got into government. Nothing that was substantial. Nothing compared to what he did 50 years ago. And that's a sad, sad ending to someone who had such an incredible, some would say heroic, first quarter of their life. And I've seen it again and again. As I look at this country and I look at the great Constitution, the way the Founding Fathers wrote it, no need to interpret it, and definitely not a living, breathing document. It is. But when you look at how it's been bastardized and how your rights, your First Amendment, the Second Amendment, your right to bear arms, your freedom of religion, those things have been destroyed in many circumstances because of the sheer stupidity or purposely misconstrued interpretation by those in government. Many people in government who had incredibly heroic times in life, as soon as they stepped into official service, negated everything that they did before. Because ultimately what happens when they get in there is they turn to politics and not leadership, and what suffers is the Constitution and your rights. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and we're out of here.